Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So today's video is on immunology and this is for OCR GCSE, all specifications, so biology A and B foundation and higher, and also combined sciences A and B foundation and higher. So the specification points you need to know for all OCR GCSE specifications are to describe the non-specific defence systems of the human body against pathogens, including examples of physical, chemical and microbial defences. Also to explain how platelets and white blood cells are adapted to their functions in the blood, including, for white blood cells, what they do and how it helps to protect against disease. And number 3 is to explain the role of the immune system of the human body in defence against disease. So a pathogen is defined as a disease-causing virus, bacteria, fungi or protist which can infect animals and plants. So the way that pathogens make you feel ill is by damaging your cells or altering how they work. So bacteria are a type of pathogen and they are very small. They are about the size, 1 out of 100 size of body cells, and they are prokaryotic cells. So this means that they don't have a nucleus, they don't have any membrane-bound organelles, and they have smaller ribosomes compared to eukaryotic cells. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell to get notifications for when I do a video on eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. So bacteria also reproduce rapidly inside of the body, and they cause illness by invading and destroying body cells and also by releasing toxins. So then we've got viruses. Now viruses are not described as alive because they don't complete the 7 life processes, which is often defined in an acronym known as Mrs. Gren. So the 7 life processes determine whether something is alive or not, and viruses do not complete this, so therefore they are defined as not alive. However, there is speculation about this. So viruses cause illness by infecting host cells, and they replicate their DNA and also their protein codes, and this is causing cells to make toxins, and it also causes cell damage due to the new virus release from the cells. We've then got fungi. So fungi are actually eukaryotic and they can be single or multi-celled, but not all fungi are pathogens. And then we've got protists, which are also eukaryotic, and many are free-living, but some are pathogens. So a physical defence against pathogens that is part of the non-specific defence system of the human body is actually our skin, and this protects our body from physical damage, infection and dehydration. So the good thing about the skin is that it's very thick, so this causes trouble for pathogens to get into the skin easily. A microbial defence is also the fact that there are bacteria on our skin, and these are known as microflora, and they are part of our microbiome. So the microflora are adapted to living on the skin, unlike pathogens, so they compete against these invading pathogens and they are much more likely to win. Another physical defence is also platelets. So if our skin is cut, we know that it immediately begins to heal itself by forming a scab. So what happens is the blood vessel is damaged, and this leaves a thing called rough edges. So of course the blood exits the wound, but then platelets in the blood are broken up by these rough edges. So then chemicals are released consequently into the blood, causing a series of reactions, and this is what causes the blood to clot and a scab to form. And it's this scab that acts as a barrier which prevents the pathogens from entering through the site of injury. So some more physical defences include our nose. So our nose has hairs inside of it which actually trap pathogens and act as a physical barrier to infection. They also have cells that produce mucus. Now mucus traps these pathogens and prevents them from entering the lungs. So when we blow our nose, the mucus that has the trapped pathogens within it is then removed. So we remove the pathogens from our body. We then have mucus and ciliated cells within our breathing passages. So there's sticky mucus within our lungs and our trachea. And this is what helps to, again, trap pathogens and prevent them from causing further damage. So there are cilia, which are hair-like structures on ciliated cells, and these are what line the trachea and the lungs, and they move in a wave-like motion. So they move or they beat the mucus holding the trapped pathogens up out of the lungs and up the trachea into the throat, where they can then be swallowed into the stomach, and then the stomach uses its acid to destroy them. And the goblet cells are actually the cells that produce this mucus. So chemical defences, which are part of the non-specific defence system of the human body, which act against pathogens, include stomach acid. So stomach produces hydrochloric acid, and hydrochloric acid is a very low pH of around 2. And this is what kills the majority of pathogens that enter into our stomach via the mouth, and then they travel down the esophagus, which is our food pipe. So the way that pathogens get into stomach can be through our food and drink, and also through mucus, which is from the trachea or lungs, which is pushed up the throat and swallowed, as we discussed before. Another chemical defense is lysozyme enzyme. So this is in tears, and this destroys bacteria by breaking down cell walls. It's also found in saliva and mucus as well. So the basic role of our immune system is ultimately to defend against disease. So if a pathogen enters the body, it's the immune system's role to try and destroy it. So the good thing about the immune system is that it has memory, so you don't always need medication or to go to the doctors, and sometimes you don't even get symptoms or get ill. So white blood cells are an important component of the immune system, and they have 3 defense roles against pathogens. So one is engulfing them by a process of phagocytosis, the second is producing antibodies, and the third is producing antitoxins. So there are 2 main types of white blood cell. These are phagocytes, which are non-specific, and they bind to and engulf pathogens, and then there's lymphocytes, which are specific, and they recognize specific antigens on the surface of pathogens. So phagocytes work by phagocytosis, and this begins with the phagocyte moving towards the pathogen. The phagocyte then releases cytoplasm to surround it, and finally the pathogen is enclosed in the white blood cell in a vacuole, and then it's broken down by enzymes. So lymphocytes are another type of important white blood cell, and they are important for antibody production. So when a pathogen does invade, it actually has a unique molecule on its surface called an antigen. So lymphocytes are able to recognize this foreign antigen and determine that this pathogen is an invading pathogen. And this allows them to then produce proteins called antibodies to destroy the pathogen. So this begins by the lymphocyte recognizing the foreign antigen on the invading pathogen. And then the lymphocytes rapidly reproduce to make many specific antibodies. And these antibodies cause cell lysis, so pathogens to burst. They also bind to pathogens to kill them, and they cover the pathogens, sticking them together in order to destroy them. So once the lymphocytes have performed their role and produced antibodies, the phagocytes then ingest the pathogen. Now, the secondary response is a key component of the immune system, and this is because when an individual is infected with the same pathogen, memory lymphocytes are able to remember the antigen from the infection before. So this means that there's a more rapid immune response, meaning that lymphocytes will rapidly produce the correct antibodies to kill it, and this is what's known as immunity. So this is what causes us not to continue to be ill when we're infected with the same pathogen. So lymphocytes are also important in producing antitoxins. So pathogens cause illness due to toxins they release into our cells, and lymphocytes are important in producing antitoxins, which neutralize or counteract the toxins produced by the pathogen. So the antitoxins combine with the toxins in order to make a safe chemical. And just a key note as well, that antitoxins are specific to a particular toxin, just like antibodies are specific to a particular antigen. So now we're going to move on to some questions based on that information. So question 1, which of these is an adaptation of white blood cells? A, the ability to make clotting enzymes. B, they can change their shape to pass out of capillaries. C, they can synthesize antibiotics. Or D, they lack a nucleus. So we of course know that this is B, because white blood cells are able to get out of the capillaries in order to enter the tissues and cells that are being invaded by pathogens. So therefore our answer is B. Question 2. Different parts of the body have natural defence mechanisms to stop pathogens infecting the body. These defences include skin, tears and secretions from the stomach. Describe how each defence stops pathogens infecting the body. So we know that the skin acts as a barrier, and it also has microflora, so bacteria on the skin, which competes with pathogens. Tears, we know, have enzymes in them called lysozymes, which destroy pathogens. And we've also got secretions from the stomach. So we know that in the stomach there is actually hydrochloric acid, which kills pathogens. So you can see our answers here. Question 3. White blood cells make protein molecules that can kill the bacteria. What is the name of these protein molecules? So we of course know that the protein molecules white blood cells produce are antibodies. Question 4. Which of these examples of human defence mechanisms against disease is non-specific? A. Antibodies in the blood system. B. Memory cells. C. Hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Or D. Lymphocytes. So on this sample assessment again, OCR have made a mistake. So the answer that I've given is different to the one that's actually in the mark scheme, but they are wrong. So just go on what I've said basically. So obviously we know that lymphocytes, memory cells and antibodies are all specific immune responses. So it is in fact hydrochloric acid in the stomach that is our non-specific defence. So our answer is C. Question 5. Explain how white blood cells protect us from disease and how they are adapted for this function. And this is worth 3 marks. So we know that white blood cells do in fact produce antitoxins, which counteract toxins produced by pathogens. They engulf pathogens, and they also produce antibodies which destroy them. Now, so we've answered the first part of the question, which is how they protect us from disease. So when we're talking about adaptations, I didn't specifically write a list or anything when I was going through the content, but I have discussed these adaptations. So one that you could put, for example, is that white blood cells contain enzymes which destroy pathogens. So if you remember back to when I was talking about phagocytosis, when the pathogen ends up in the vacuole, it is then killed within the phagocyte by enzymes. And we can also talk about how white blood cells are specific to pathogens, so the antibodies produced by these white blood cells are specific to pathogens, and then white blood cells also have receptors that recognize antigens on pathogens, and you can see the answers there. Question 6. White blood cells are one component of the blood. There are 3 other major components of the blood, which all have specific functions. Draw a line to link each blood component to its function. So we've got blood components plasma, red blood cell and platelet. So we know from our content today that platelets do in fact help the blood to clot. So we can see at the top here it says cell fragment that helps blood to clot at injury sites and helps seal wounds. So we know that platelet does in fact do that, so we can join those 2 up. Now we haven't specifically spoken about the other 2 blood components, so you don't need to worry about these 2 for this specific topic, so for immunology, but I'm just going to quickly go through them just so we can complete the question. So red blood cells contain hemoglobin and they transport oxygen around the body, and plasma actually transports dissolved substances such as hormones, urea and food molecules, and you can see our answer there. Question 7. When bacteria enter the body, they multiply. The body launches an immune response. Name the type of proteins that the body produces to attack the multiplying bacteria. So we know that, of course, white blood cells are our main cell important in our immune response, and white blood cells produce proteins called antibodies. So antibodies is therefore our correct answer. Question 8. Humans have defences that make it difficult for pathogens to enter. Draw lines to link each defence to its correct description. One line has been drawn for you. So we've got bacteria living in intestines compete with pathogens. Then we've got mucus as a defence. So we know that mucus does in fact trap pathogens. So mucus is going to go here. Then we've got skin. So we know that skin acts as a barrier to pathogens. And then stomach acid we know breaks down and kills pathogens. And we can see our answer here. Question 9. Whooping cough is a non-communicable bacterial infection. The diagram below shows the blood of a person infected with whooping cough. Label the 2 structures of the diagram. So we can see we've got a whooping cough bacterium here, and it has these little triangles on the outside, and there is actually a line pointing to one here. So we need to write down what this is. So we know that, of course, pathogens have antigens on their outsides, and it's an antigen which helps white blood cells to recognise that it's an invading pathogen. So I is antigen, and then of course we've got our white blood cell on the right, and this has got antibodies around it. It's the antibodies that lock onto the antigen in order to destroy the pathogen. So we can see our answer here. Question 10. White blood cells produce antibodies. Describe the role of white blood cells and antibodies in the defence against pathogens. So we know that pathogens have antigens on their surface, which antibodies attach to. The antigens also help the white blood cell to identify the pathogen as invading and produce antibodies to kill it. And then white blood cells also engulf the pathogen. And we can see our answers there. Question 11. Infectious diseases in plants and animals can be caused by some types of microorganisms called pathogens. Our bodies have defences that make it difficult for pathogens to enter our bodies. Use lines to link each defence to its correct description. One of the descriptions is incorrect. So we've got our defences here. So bacteria living in intestines, so they are going to compete with pathogens. We've then got mucus. We know that mucus traps pathogens. Then skin, we know, acts as a barrier. Stomach acid breaks down pathogens, and tears contain an enzyme that kills pathogens. And you can see our answer here. Question 12. If an individual survives Ebola, they are unlikely to ever suffer from it again. They are immune. Explain how individuals become immune to Ebola. So don't be put off by the specific disease that they're given. Just think about the main part of the question. So it's basically explaining how individuals become immune. So we know that receptors or membrane-bound antibodies on a white blood cell will attach to the Ebola antigen if it infects a human. And then once it's done this, white blood cells will multiply in order to produce many antibodies to counteract the Ebola antigen. And some of these white blood cells are going to become memory cells in order to be produced quickly for a second infection of Ebola, for a secondary response. And so we can discuss this. We can say how if Ebola does infect us for a second time around, it's going to trigger an antibody production, and it's going to be destroyed quickly before they become ill due to the large number of antibodies that can be produced in a short time. So you can see our answers here. So thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you have enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss out on any videos. Also make sure to share this with any people you may know that this channel could help out. Make sure to head over to my Instagram as well. I often ask questions on there about specific videos, about different topics. So go over there and get involved, and make sure to head over to my website to access loads more exam questions and revision resources. So I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.